I am an engineer. I find beauty in modern power stations and the pylons and wires that stretch over the face of Britain. I'm proud, too, of the fact that per head of the population, Britain has a greater mileage of cable than any other country in the world. But as an engineer, let me remind you that for all these purposes, a different cable is necessary, from the supertension oil or gas-filled cable bringing power to a city, to the simple piece of flex bringing light to a reading lamp.
A cable like this, no thicker than a man's wrist, is capable of harnessing 140,000 horsepower. Power for business, education, light for shops and homes, power for factories, power for transport and communications, power, in fact, to benefit all in health, work, and play.
But power also means pylons that carry the nation's electricity across the land. Today, we're telling the story of the men that build them, the pylon men. These are the men who have made danger their stock in trade. Real-life danger men who climb up to a world of work that most of us might conveniently ignore, but it must be done. This is how they build the 165 feet high steel towers that will carry the Central Electricity Generating Board's cables across Sussex and Hampshire to the West Country. You might say that the pylon men work above the ground level controversy that goes on before the plans for Britain's power gets the go-ahead. But when the decisions have been made and the best course plotted, the steel giants stride 5 to the mile across the fields, and the huge dish insulators can be slotted into place. Putting cables underground costs 10 times the price of pylon power. When the railways were first laid down, it was feared the flaming hot coals would burn up the whole of Britain. Now the age of steam is over, people are more concerned that we've lost our railway heritage. In days to come, pylons too may have their champions, eager to preserve them as historic monuments. But the job of spacing the cable goes on, calling for a high wire act that would thrill any circus audience. This is where the pylon men turn spacemen. With their skill and daring, the pylon men carry the amenity of electricity to remote places. And the pylons themselves certainly have their own kind of grandeur as they march across the land.
The line itself stretches from Beaulieu, adjacent to Inverness in the north of Scotland, running through the Highlands of Scotland, through the Cairngorms, down through Dromocta, and down through towards Stirling.
This project has been a huge challenge. It's a multidisciplinary, all the way from the design, the engineering, right through to the construction.
The major challenges on this project for the construction element was the logistics of operating over a construction area which is 220 kilometres.
The geography itself is a challenge. If you've got an incident where you need to get the emergency services to it, you've got to be able to tell them exactly where you are. So every tower is labelled with its grid coordinates.
The biggest challenge would be the ground, the topography of the line. So things like proximity to water courses, road, rivers, overhead power lines all had to be taken into account.
To deliver the project, we've had to undertake the construction of over 250 kilometres of access tracks. We're taking our heaviest construction equipment through the mountains of Scotland. The only way we can do that is put in proper access roads which will allow us to transport steelwork, concrete, people, equipment all over the place.
We've completed the project and the power's now running through the line. Got to be honest, there is a massive sense of achievement.
The whole of the team that's been involved in this project has done a fantastic job and one that leaves a really good lasting legacy.
In August 1992, when the dog days were drawing to an end, I set off to walk the county of Suffolk in the hope of dispelling the emptiness that takes hold of me whenever I've completed a long stint of work. And in fact, my hope was realized, up to a point. For I've seldom felt so carefree as I did then, walking for hours in the day through the thinly populated countryside, which stretches inland from the coast. I wonder now, however, whether there might be something in the old superstition that certain ailments of the spirit and of the body are particularly likely to beset us under the sign of the dog star.
Well, one of the odd things about the book is that it begins as an account of somebody having finished a book. Because he's finished a piece of writing and he now feels apparently carefree. And it seems to me the book starts inviting you to imagine what it's like to feel suddenly released from something. He's going on this wonderful walk. Within several lines, he couldn't be more depressed. It's like the thing Freud says about headaches. The moment somebody says to themselves, God, isn't it marvellous? I haven't had one of those headaches for ages. That's a sign they're about to get one. Sebald says, I felt incredibly free, carefree, and suddenly he's not free and full of cares.
The second epigraph in the book is from a German encyclopedia, which talks about the rings of Saturn as being fragments of a moon that wandered too close to the planet of Saturn and was shattered by the gravitational pull, but remains as a ring of dust particles forever circling the planet that destroyed it. So if you think of the way the rings of Saturn works as an attempt at several walks round an idea of England in concentric rings made up of shattered fragments of a past, you begin to get the picture.
Yes! Whee!